He looked up, he says, "Can I have $1 million?" God looked down, he says, "Yeah, in a day, in a minute." We're talking about money, we're talking about contentment, and we're still in the book of Timothy, which we've been studying for probably a few months now. We're almost there. I think there's only next week to go, and we've finished Timothy, 1 Timothy. So this week we're talking about two different portions in chapter 6. So I'm going to read the first bit. It's chapter 6, verse 6 to 10. "But godliness and contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." We're not here today to talk about tithing and giving. I'm not a televangelist trying to get a lot of money. We're not talking about that. We're talking about having money and contentment. The Bible doesn't commend pursuing money. It talks more about being content with what we have. And there's a few examples of that. You think of the young ruler who went to Jesus, and he was a rich young ruler, and Jesus told him to go away and sell what you have and give to the poor. Then a few weeks ago when I spoke here, we talked about Naaman. Remember, he went and got healed, Elijah, and God healed him. And Naaman wanted to give Elijah some money, and he said, "No, I don't want the money, don't want the gifts." But then later on, Elijah's servant heard about that, so he took off after Naaman, and he says, "I want your gifts." And Elijah's changed his mind, "Can you give me some of those gifts?" And then there's Achan. Remember Achan? He was in the Israelite army, and they took over the city of Ai. And God says, "Don't take anything from the city." But Achan sneaked back, and he got a whole lot of goods and buried them in his tent. So God condemns that sort of wealth. But there's a question that comes to mind. If I become a Christian, what do I get? Do I get a better job? Do I get more money? Is religion a means to wealth? Well, there is great gain from becoming a Christian, but it's not necessarily material. But in saying that, if you go outside a church, most churches, a lot of churches, you'll see a lot of really nice cars, and maybe utes. But if you go to outside a TAB, you won't see many nice cars. You'll see a lot of rubbish cars. And so there is, if you really want to look at it like that, there is some gain in becoming a Christian materially. But also we gain a lot of friends. We gain joy. We get peace. We get forgiveness. We get eternal life. I mean, that just goes on, doesn't it? We get victory. We get security. And in verse 6 in the Message Bible, it says that we are already rich because a devout life brings wealth. And you might say, "Well, I'm not rich. I'm not wealthy." Well, statistics will say that if you can come up with $8,500, you're in the top 50% of wealthy people in the world. $8,500. If you can come up with $190,000, and you just think if you sell your car and your house and whatever, you're in the top 10% of wealthy people in the world. And if you can come up with 1.7 million, and there's a few houses around Taupo worth around that, if you sell everything you have, come up with 1.7, you're in the top 1% of wealthy people in the world. And I suspect there's a few people in this church today who are in that top 1%. See, contentment, one definition is this: not having all you want, but wanting only what you have. Not having all you want, but wanting only what you have. Does contentment therefore mean you don't have ambition? No. we can still be ambitious and still be content. It means delaying the gratification and enjoying where you are on your way to where you're going. I'm going to say that again. It means delaying gratification and enjoying where you are on your way to where you're going. Paul in Philippians, he said this, Philippians chapter 4 verse 12. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or living in want. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Just think of what he's been through. He's been sitting in a prison, probably naked, probably cold, tied, chained to another guard, maybe in stocks. He knows what it is to be content and what's important in life. And he can write those verses. I know what it is to be content, whether I have a lot or whether I don't have much. See, it's all about focusing on God's goodness. We just sung that great song about the goodness of God. When we focus on God's goodness, suddenly we realize that we really should be content. It's not, I will be content once I have whatever. It's being content now. Paul says, in whatever situation, then you defeat the spiritual enemies of greed, of envy, of pride, because those things come up when we try to get more and more and more. Do you ever have enough? Are you ever happy? Buying stuff that you don't need, with money you don't have, to impress people you don't know, is not the way to live. Buying stuff you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't know is not the way to live, because money won't make you happy. And there's many, many people around the world who have got a lot of money will tell you exactly that money will not make you happy. Most of us agree, and yet we act like it will. Nowadays we're better paid, we're better fed, we're better educated than probably we've ever been in the history of the world. Yet the divorce rates have doubled, teen suicide has tripled, and depression and mental health issues has soared in the last 30-odd years. A man 2,000 years ago, he wrote, money of itself has yet to make anyone rich. Why? Because what you are, no matter how much or how little you have, you are what you are. Solomon was a pretty wise man. He wrote in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10, he who loves money shall never have enough. He wrote that hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The foolishness of thinking that wealth brings happiness. See, true godliness, and it talks about godliness in that verse 6, true godliness means a person trusts God for everything and learns to be content with what God gives. But not wasting it. Not spend it all up eating out, buying the latest clothes, and you'll end up with a full stomach, expanding waistline, and a wardrobe full and empty pockets. Hebrews, I'm reading a lot of verses today, and I've got them written out just to make it easier. Hebrews 13, it says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. So there's a lot of verses to enforce that we need to be content with what we have. Matthew, he talks about it in the gospel also, about serving two masters. You can't serve God and you can't serve money. You can't serve two masters. In verse 7 it says, nothing in, nothing out. See, we were born without pockets. We weren't supposed to keep it all. I grew up in Auckland and lived right opposite the Waikumete Cemetery. on the Waikumete Hill. And that's a huge cemetery, one of the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe. And as a child, I used to watch the funerals come every day. There'd be several every day, and you'd see the big black hearse come, and then you'd see maybe 2 or 3 cars behind it, or maybe 100 cars behind it. And they'd all queue up, just going really slowly, all had their lights on, and they'd all go into the cemetery, into the crematorium. But you know what I never saw? There was never a truck following the hearse with all the goods that the people had created during their life. Never a truck. There's just the cars. There's only people. You come in with nothing, you go out with nothing. And it was always a big thing, I remember, in Hawke's Bay when Sir James Whitey died. The big question, how much has he got? How much is he leaving? The answer is simple. Everything. He left everything he had, because you can't take it with you. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 15 says, everyone comes naked from their mother's womb, and as everyone comes, so they depart. I think they do put clothes on you when you get buried. They take nothing from their toil that they can carry in their hands. So the moral of the story is we better put to good use what we have now. See, verse 8 tells us that we have food and clothes, and we should be content with food and clothes. Probably all of us have power and water as well. But are we more concerned about getting our phone charged up or having fast internet? Are we content with the simple things? See, verse 9 gives us a warning. Seeking wealth leads to temptation. It can become destructive, and dishonesty creeps in, and timesheets, and filling in things which maybe nobody else really knows about, and tax avoidance. There's the temptation creeps in. And verse 10 talks about the love or the determination to gain, which is the issue. And it says it's the first kind to all kinds of sin. And it leads to poor decisions. See, temptation is a huge issue. Maybe an example is, does money and work come over family? Do we spend more time and more energy and more thoughts on our money and our work than over our family? We can become selfish. We can become stingy. We can become manipulative and maybe addicted and maybe into gambling, and everything is about money, everything is about profit over ethics. And that's a key phrase, profit over ethics. And it can cause us to wander from the faith. And I wonder if there's people here who are more content on earning and working and creating money, and they slowly start to drop off from maybe coming to church. Maybe they drop off from their Bible study group. Maybe they pull away from their Christian friends. The love of money, it can cause us to wander from your faith. See, when your output exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall. Many, many years ago, a long time ago, I was asked to sing a song at a wedding. I don't know quite why. It's about the only solo I've ever sung in my life, and I won't be doing it anymore. But it's an amazing song, and I've never forgotten it. And just a little bit, it says this: sitting by the ocean with nothing to do but talk to you. Sitting here listening to the whispering waves telling me it's true. Hiking to the top of a mountain, drinking water from a clear, cool stream. Watching the sunset and talking to God and knowing He loves me. These simple pleasures are everywhere in great measure. Just open your eyes and you will see the richest things in life are free. See, money can buy a lot of things, but there's a whole lot of things that money can't buy. It can buy you a bed, but it can't buy you sleep. You ever laid in bed at night trying to get to sleep and just wish maybe you could spend some money and instantly you're asleep? I mean, you can buy sleep drops or something, goodness knows what else, but You can buy a bed, but you can't buy a sleep. You can buy books, but you can't buy brains. I wish we could sometimes. You can buy food, but you can't buy an appetite. You can buy a house, but you can't buy a home. You can buy medicine, but you can't buy health. You can buy luxuries, but not happiness. You can buy image. You can buy all the latest gear and look the coolest you can be, but you can't buy character. And you can buy religion, but you can't buy salvation. So really, money's not that useful, is it? Does this mean that God doesn't want us to have money? No. He will actually trust you with the more money when you demonstrate that your trust is not in your money, but in Him. Say that again. He will trust you with more money when you demonstrate that your trust is in Him, not in your money. See, 1 Timothy 6, verse 17. And we're going to go on to that second section now. It says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life." See, James, I think it's James, says that every perfect gift comes from the Father above. In Psalms 49, I haven't got Psalms 49. It says, "Do not be overawed when others grow rich, when the splendour of their houses increases. For they will take nothing with them when they die. Their splendour will not descend with them. People who have wealth but lack understanding are like the beasts that perish." Tells us not to be arrogant. Trust in God, not to trust in riches. Doesn't say don't have it. It says don't trust in it. It's not a sin to be rich. We need rich people. How would all the charities, how would the churches survive if we didn't have rich people to give when they need to give? We need them. And there's righteous and there's unrighteous poor people, and there's righteous and there's unrighteous rich people. It's not the wealth or the lack of it, but it's the heart that counts. Remember the parable of the poor widow who gave one penny, one denarius or whatever it was? She gave everything she had. She didn't have much, but she gave what she had. But some people do become rich, and in verse 17 it talks about that. But God has provided either the money, either the materials, or He has supplied the ability to get it, to gain it. So we've got to put our trust in God. And when we put our trust in God, there's a couple of things happen. Number one, you become strangely content, because your hope then is in God. It's not in the money, it's not in your material things, it's not in your car or your boat or your bike or whatever. Your hope is in God. And I got challenged with that a long time ago now. I had a little nursery business in Auckland, and we're doing quite well, we're all happy. But then I sort of was challenged about going into Christian camping ministry. And I was quite keen on that, but I also wanted to have a farm. And I thought, what do? Do I sell this nursery business, buy a farm? Or do I sell the nursery business and go into Christian camping, which I know would have absolutely no income? Well, we took the challenge, we took what God really told us to do, and we went into the camping ministry for 10 years. But interesting enough, after 2 years, I actually got a farm, which I totally didn't expect. I put the farm, thought that's it, you know. We put our hope in God, and God provided. So you can become strangely content. And number two, you can also become irrationally generous. The more your heart drifts toward God, the less you worry about the dollars. The more your heart drifts towards God, the less you worry about the dollars. So what if you are rich? And as I say, probably everyone here really today is rich. Number one, you've got to be humble. And verse 17a talks about that. God doesn't condemn success, but he does condemn the arrogance. Because it all comes from God. Remember James 1. All things come from God above. So we've got to be thankful and proud. Thankful, not proud, not arrogant. Be thankful for what God's given us. And number two, we've got to be rational. Verse 17b says to fix our hope on God. You see, money talks. You know what it says? Goodbye. Money just talks and it says goodbye. Have it 1 minute and next minute it's gone. Proverbs 23. Proverbs 23 verse 4 and 5. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Man, it's good to have the real practical verses, isn't it, that really tell it like it is. And number three, be generous. Verse 18b, it says generosity. Talks about generosity, sharing, being willing, being eager. The New Testament talks about a cheerful giver, enjoying giving, being happy when you give. But we're not here to talk about our giving today. Our treasure that we have to store up is in heaven. Store it up in heaven. Love God and love us more than yourself and more than your possessions. So are we content? Like Paul talks about in Philippians 4:11. He learnt to be content. Have we learnt to be content? Or does our shopping expeditions tell us a different story? It's easy to spend money. And I've become recently a bit of a coffee drinker. But I read the other day, and I haven't done the maths to see if it's true, but I presume it is. If you buy a coffee every day, instead of buying it, if you put that money in the bank and it compounds interest, in 50 years you'll have $1 million. Can you believe that? It's too late for me to start now, but for you young fellas, put that $5 in the bank every day for 50 years and you'll have $1 million at the end. Of course, $1 million might not be worth anything in 50 years' time, but so how much does material loss affect our happiness? So if the share market crashes, if you're redundant, suddenly your wages are cut, how much does it affect our happiness? Because that's really a bit of a telltale about how much we're depending and how content we are. See, wealth is like seawater. It doesn't quench the thirst. The more we get, the more we want. Wealth is not security. It can't buy the health and the things that we talked about before. But we've got to seek to be independent and prudently provide for the future, because that's a Christian's duty. But to make the love of money the driving force of life is the most perilous of sins. In 1 Timothy 5 verse 8, if we go back one chapter, it says this: anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Pretty serious words. So we've got two choices. We can love God, serve God, and use money. Or we can love money and serve money and use God. It's easy to believe in God, but trust in money. It's almost like a series we're studying, some of us, called The Christian Atheist, where you believe in God, but you live as though he doesn't exist. And that's what can happen if we put the money in our wealth first. When you wake up in the morning, what do you say? How can I give more, or how can I make more? Remember that fellow Zacchaeus in the New Testament in Luke? He had an encounter with Jesus. He met Jesus and he changed. And from then on, instead of ripping people off like he was as a tax collector, he started giving. It changed his life as he met God. And the giving flowed from his salvation. Matthew 6 verse 33 is a well-known verse. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. And what's the next one? And then all these things will be added unto you. So in summary, 3 things. What you are is more crucial than what you have. Proverbs 28 verse 6 says, better the poor whose walk is blameless than the rich whose ways are perverse. So what you are is more crucial than what you have. Number 2, what God sees in you is more crucial than what you have. Proverbs 15:16, better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. And thirdly, what others think of you is more crucial than what you have. And again in Proverbs it says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. The Bible has so many down-to-earth practical verses about how we should live as Christians. I just want to finish with a prayer that I found somewhere. It says a prayer for financial contentment. Lord, heal me from the stress of worrying about my perception among peers. Give me the gift of satisfaction with what you want me to have. Thank you for teaching me to walk beside you, not in front of you. From this day forward, I will walk in peace and prosperity, knowing who I am and whose I am. I'm preparing to be blessed with the practical steps I'm learning. My focus is on you and my relationship with you. Your word says, when I put you first, other things will happen as I prepare myself for what you have for me. Thank you for maturity coming to me spiritually, financially, and emotionally. My family will be blessed by what you're teaching me. Amen. There's a couple of minutes, and I'd really like us to sing a song. If we can find the words for Change My Heart, Oh God. Can I just use a guitar, Laura? Laura's not here somewhere. It's just a great song, and it's sort of a song of commitment to what we've just been learning. Change my heart, oh God. And as we've read all those verses from the Word, sometimes we need to change our heart. We need to change our mindset, our thinking, and change our priorities and put our hope in God. Just stay sitting and we'll just sing it together. We've got the words here. Change my heart, oh